Hi, my name is Robin and I'm presenting our work assessing the performance of online students, new data, new approaches, improved accuracy. In our work, we study the question of how we can use various types and large amounts of student log data to improve student performance modeling. Let's begin with some background. Intelligent tutoring systems are an educational technology which provides students with personalized and adaptive instruction. We can think of the typical ITS workflow as an inner and an outer loop. In the outer loop, the system decides on the next learning activity for the individual student, for example, a practice problem or learning material. In the inner loop, the system then guides the students through the activity and can offer help as necessary. It records, for example, which answers the student submits and how they interact with different videos and reading materials, and it can offer help in form of hints, worked examples, or other ITS-specific techniques. In order to adapt the workflow to individual students, the system needs an understanding of where the student is in their individual learning process. And here, student performance modeling can help and provides an important building block of intelligent tutoring systems. Student performance modeling is concerned with estimating a student's ability to answer questions based on interaction log data. The student performance model monitors individual learning activities from the student. In this example, we can see that the student first interacts with a lecture video, then answers 3 questions, gets 2 incorrect, 1 correct, then reads some reading material, answers 2 more questions correctly, then requests a hint, and then answers the last question incorrectly. And based on this log data, at each step, the performance model makes an estimate for each question of how likely it is that the student is able to solve this particular question. If we formalize this a bit more, we can think of it that at each time step, T for student S, we take the prior student interaction history and a hypothetical next question, and then pass it to the student performance model, FW here. And the task of the performance model is to predict if student S will respond correctly to this question if it were asked next in the learning process. And one question we see here is, what should we tell our model about the student? Like, what type of student log data is most informative to make accurate performance predictions? If we look at existing models in the literature, we notice that a lot of prior approaches solely focus on question response logs. That means they don't look at all types of learning materials and instead solely focus on which questions the student answers and if they got these individual questions correct or incorrect in the past. Other types of student log data is mostly underexplored. For example, learning material and hint usage, interaction times, which track how much time students spend on individual activities, the question context, for example, if a question is asked as part of a pre-test or a post-test or a review session, and also information about the skill prerequisite structure, which captures which skills are prerequisite or post-requisite to other skills. The other thing we right now see in the literature is that the size of recent datasets increased by an order of magnitude. Datasets now contain hundreds of thousands of students, and they track millions and tens of millions of student responses. This motivates the question of how we can use this large-scale training data to learn better student performance models. The other thing we see is that we don't only have question response logs in these data sets. We have actually a variety of different types of other information. For example, which teacher or school is associated with a student, which study module is a question is placed in, and also interactions with learning materials. And one thing we can observe is that different data sets offer different types of student log data. Not every data set captures all types of this information, which raises the question, which of this information is most important and which information can benefit student performance models. Now, going forward to our work, we pursue one main research question, and which is, how can we utilize various types and large amounts of student log data to train accurate models for predicting the performance of future students? In particular, we study three directions of this question. The first one is, which features derived from log data are most beneficial for student performance predictions? Second, which types of machine learning algorithms are most effective on these large-scale data sets? And third, can we improve accuracy by training specialized models for different parts of the curriculum? The third one is in contrast to the most popular approach right now, which is to just train one big performance model and deploy it for all aspects of the ITS. To summarize the conclusion of our paper ahead of time, the new approaches which we explore in this paper indeed improve prediction accuracy. And if we compare the prediction accuracy of our new approach with the previous logistic regression state of the art, we can see that on average across these four data sets, we see an accuracy improvement of 1.5% and an AUC improvement of over 4%. And if we compare our logistic regression-based approach with recent deep learning-based approaches, we also achieve competitive performance. In fact, on 3 of these 4 data sets, our approach is more accurate than current deep learning-based approaches. Now moving to the first point, which features derived from log data are most beneficial for student performance predictions? We start our feature exploration by surveying existing features from existing logistic regression-based models in the literature. Among others, IRT, PFA, RPFA, PPE, DAS3H, and BestLR. All these models use different features, and for our evaluation, we survey their features and use them as basis for our feature pool. The BestLR model is going to be particularly important for our later feature evaluation. It is the prior best logistic regression-based student performance model, and it was formed by combining features from existing logistic regression-based models. To take a closer look at how this model is structured, we can see here the way BestLR computes its performance predictions. We color-coded the variables such that the blue variables represent features which are computed from the student history, and the orange parameters are values that are learned from student data. Here we can see that BestLR uses a student ability parameter, a question difficulty parameter, which is similar to how IRT does things. We have parameters for the total number of correct responses, for the total number of incorrect responses. We also have difficulty parameters and count parameters for each individual skill, which is associated with the current question. Okay, from here on, we looked at different features from different types of log data which haven't been explored so far. We looked at the log data which is provided by these new data sets, and we identified different categories of features in which we group our study. The first category are question response features, which is the most commonly used type of student log data used in the literature right now. Here we evaluated existing features, and we also proposed 2 new features to capture long-term performance via an average correctness feature and short-term performance via a response pattern feature. We then looked at temporal features, which describe, for example, when the student answered a question and how much time the student required to solve a question. Then we looked at learning context features, which describe in which topic the student is currently in, and if his question is placed, for example, in the pre-test or in the post-test session. And we also looked at personal context features, for example, what is the school of a student, who is his teacher, how old is he, and which grade level he is in. We then looked at KC graph features, which describe how well did the student do on skills that are prerequisite or post-requisite to the current skill. And we also looked at learning material usage for hints, videos, and reading materials. To describe our experimental setup, we focus on students with more than 10 responses, and we perform a 5-fold cross-validation on the student level. This means that in each split, like there's a different subset of students. What is interesting about these new data sets is that each fold contains millions of responses from thousands of students. And this allows for very low variance in our cross-validation results. Typically, we are below 0.2 or 0.1% accuracy and AUC. In terms of performance metrics, we focus on accuracy and AUC. AUC is like a particularly popular metric in this domain, and it describes the relationship between the true positive and the false positive rate for different classification thresholds. And for the deep learning baselines, we perform a grid search and early stopping to ensure that we use the right hyperparameters and that we train for the right amount of time. We first evaluate the benefits of individual features by training augmented LR models, best LR models. And how we do this is that we take the best LR feature set and we add individual features to it, and then we can compare the performance of these augmented best LR models to normal best LR models that only use the standard best LR features. And now looking at the feature evaluation, we present here the most beneficial features which we discovered in our feature evaluation. Our full paper contains even more, but here we only focus on the ones that prove themselves to be beneficial for all 4 data sets. The first row shows the performance of the best LR baseline for the 4 data sets. Then we look at question response features, like our smooth correctness and response pattern feature, which are beneficial for all 4 data sets. And then the time window or temporal count features from DAS3H, RPFA, and PPE. And those were also helpful for augmenting the best LR model. Then additional temporal features are current lag time, which measures the time since the last student response to the start of the next question, and prior elapsed time, which measures the time of how long does a student require to answer the previous question. We then looked at different learning context features, which all, like some of them are more beneficial than others. Study module, that means like if the context a question is placed in form of pretest or post-test, is very beneficial for all 4 data sets. Then prereq and post-requisite count features were helpful, and different learning material usage features were helpful too. But we only saw rather small improvements for the learning material usage features. And the reason for that is likely that we only counted individual features and didn't look at the content of individual readings and videos. So we didn't relate individual videos to individual questions. Based on these feature exploration, we introduced new logistic regression-based performance models. The first one is best LR, which adds additional question response features to the best LR feature set. In particular, it uses DAS3H, RPFR, and PPE count features and combines them with these 2 new question response features called with smoothed average correctors and response pattern. And the nice thing about best LR plus, it only requires question response data and it can be applied to all prior ITS data sets. The second model which we explored is augmented LR, which adds all features we found beneficial to the best LR feature set. This leads to larger performance improvements, but it requires us to filter, like to adapt our feature set to the underlying data set, because not all data sets support all types of data right now. Okay, now moving on to the question, which types of machine learning algorithms are most effective on these large scale data sets? And here we perform a comparative study of different methods across these 4 data sets. The first family of models are the logistic regression models. And if we compare those to our new algorithms, we see AUC improvements of 1, 2, and even more %. If we compare our new models to the deep learning based approaches, which are rather recent, we see that on 3 of the 4 data sets, we outperform them, and only on ED, DKT leads to better results. It's very interesting that our new algorithms that are logistic regression based achieve the performance of deep learning models, even though they use 2 orders of magnitude less parameters. And it raises the question of how we can adapt deep learning based approaches to make better use of student log data. Now to the last point. Can we improve accuracy by training specialized models for different parts of the curriculum? Here we have 2 directions. In the first direction, we looked at time specialized performance models, and the motivation for this is the cold start problem. When a new user starts using the ITS, we know very little about them. And our performance model typically requires a burn-in period until they reach peak performance, which is often about 50 questions. And that implies for a new user during the first session, there's like only limited accuracy in our predictions. And our idea for mitigating this new user cold start problem is the use of time specialized models that assess students at different points in time. That means we train one specific model to assess students at the beginning of their learning process, and then use different models depending on how much observations we already collected for the individual student. Here we present results for an experiment using the best LR feature set, and we compare the performance predictions of a generalist model, which just means we just train a single model to make predictions for the entire student history, which is the common standard right now, to a set of time specialized models which operate in different time windows. Like here, we see that the first model, time specialized model, is specialized for the first 10 student responses, then for the next 40, and then for the next 50, and so on. So depending on how much observations we have about the student, we can use a different student performance model. And one thing which we observe for all 4 data sets are AUC improvements early on of the order of 1 to 2% for all 4 data sets. And in some cases, also the overall prediction accuracy is improved. Now, this motivates the question, like we saw that multiple time specialized models can lead to better performance in certain cases, to the question of, can we use different types of specialized models that operate on different parts of the curriculum? For example, can we have a different model for the pre-test session? Can we have a different model for the post-test session? And here we pursue 2 ideas. The first idea states that we can partition the data based on different features. For example, like I mentioned, based on the study module. And then we train a specialized model for each partition. And during the deployment, we look which partition is the student currently in, and then we make a prediction based on the model that's specialized on this partition. The second thing we investigate is, can we learn to combine these predictions from different partitioning schemes? For example, can we have a model that's specialized on a certain topic? Can we have a model that's specialized on a certain skill, on a certain study module? There are a lot of ways you can partition the data. And if we aggregate the performance predictions made by these different models, can we use stacking, which is a machine learning technique, to combine their predictions and improve accuracy even further? And what we see here is that BestLR benefits from training multiple specialized models. And that if we combine the predictions, we achieve even larger improvements, here of the order of about 1% in AUC. If we use the augmented LR feature set to repeat this experiment, we see consistent improvements, but of a smaller scale of about 0.2% AUC. And the reason for that, we think, is that a lot of these features are already directly included in the BestLR feature set. Okay, to summarize the contributions of our paper, we first identified different features from various types of student log data, and so how they can improve performance predictions. This is especially interesting for ITS designers that think about which types of data should they track in their system. We then looked at how we can use large-scale log data to train multiple models, which allows us to improve prediction accuracy. And third, we proposed new logistic regression-based models, which provide strong baselines and are even competitive with deep learning models. And if we compare them with existing logistic regression models, we receive an error reduction of 7.3% in terms of accuracy and 17.5% in terms of AUC. We share all the code for data processing and for the logistic regression and deep learning models in our GitHub repository. And for those who are interested, we would be happy for you to use it. Thank you very much for listening.